It began, like so many American legends, with a place that shouldn't exist. A patch of wilderness where logic falters, maps contradict, and people simply disappear. Locals call it the Bennington Triangle, a quiet region of southwestern Vermont where, between 1945 and 1950, 5 people vanished without a trace. No bodies, no clues, no answers. The land itself seems unremarkable. Rolling hills, dense forests, the kind that swallow sound. But ask anyone who lives nearby, and you'll hear the same tone in their voice. Hesitation, the kind that comes from knowing something is wrong, but being afraid to name it. The first to vanish was Middie, a 74-year-old hunting guide who knew the Green Mountains better than anyone. On November 12, 1945, he led a group of 4 hunters into the woods near Hell Hollow, a name that would soon feel prophetic. He walked ahead of the group, turned a bend in the trail, and was never seen again. Search parties combed the forest for weeks. They found 1 rifle cartridge in a stream bed, possibly his, and nothing else. It was as if the forest had erased him a year later, on December 1st, 1946. Paula Welden, an 18-year-old student at Bennington College, decided to take a solo hike along the long trail, a path cutting through Vermont's wilderness. She left wearing a bright red coat, a detail everyone remembered, because it should have made her impossible to miss. She waved goodbye to a passing motorist near the trailhead. Hours later, darkness fell, and Paula was gone. The search that followed became one of the largest in Vermont history. Hundreds of volunteers, bloodhounds, helicopters, but no trace. Her red coat, her footprints, her body, nothing. The dogs followed her scent for about 100 yards before it simply stopped, as though she'd stepped off the earth over the next few years. More people disappeared. In December 1949, a veteran named James Tedford boarded a bus in St. Albans, heading home to the Bennington Soldiers' Home. Witnesses saw him asleep near the back seat as the bus passed through the triangle. When it reached Bennington, Tedford was gone. His luggage remained in the rack above his seat, and his ticket was still in his pocket. The bus never stopped between towns. In October 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson vanished while playing in his family's truck near the old dump outside town. His mother left him for an hour. When she returned, he was gone. The boy had been wearing a bright red jacket, just like Paula Welden. The dogs again followed his scent. And again, it ended abruptly at the edge of the woods. A few weeks later, the final disappearance sealed the legend. Frieda Langer, 53, an experienced hiker, slipped into a stream while trekking near Somerset Reservoir. She told her companion she'd go back to camp to change her clothes. The path was short, familiar, and flat. She never arrived. For months, search teams scoured the area, nothing. Then, 7 months later, her body was discovered, not miles away, not hidden deep in the forest, but right in the middle of the search zone that had been combed dozens of times. The body was too decomposed to determine a cause of death. After that, the disappearances stopped. As suddenly as they had begun, 5 people, all in the same region, all within 5 years, no patterns, no ransom notes, no suspect. Just an invisible border in the Vermont wilderness where people vanished, and the world kept moving as if nothing had happened. Some blamed the landscape. Steep ravines, hidden sinkholes, and old mine shafts that could swallow a person whole. Others pointed to foul play, a serial predator perhaps, using the forest as cover. But none of that explained why dogs lost the scent in open air, why the bus passenger vanished in transit, or why a body could reappear months later in a place already searched. There were whispers of something older. The Abenaki, the region's indigenous people, spoke of a stone that eats men, a place where the earth itself opens to take the living hikers in modern times report strange sensations. Compasses spinning wildly, voices echoing when there's no one nearby, lights drifting through the trees. The Bennington Triangle sits quietly now, its forests reclaimed by moss and silence. But every few years, another hiker disappears without explanation, and locals still say that when you walk deep enough into those woods, the air changes, and the forest begins to listen. The deeper investigators pushed into the forests of southwestern Vermont. The more the disappearance patterns began to fracture under their own weight, nothing aligned. Nothing completed the puzzle. Every fact contradicted another, as though the landscape itself refused to give up whatever truth was buried beneath its moss-covered floor. The Bennington Triangle was no longer just a location. It had become a quiet, unspoken boundary between what could be explained and what defied every rule of reality. As the years passed, the files grew heavier, yet no case moved even a step closer to resolution. What connected the victims became far stranger than what separated them. Each disappearance lacked the elemental components investigators relied on. No signs of conflict, no logical motivation, no clear weather events, no credible suspects, yet every case shared an eerie, suffocating silence. A silence that became the signature of this place. Patterns emerged in ways that were more unsettling than helpful. The first pattern was the sudden extinction of sound. Witnesses and search teams repeatedly described moments when the forest fell into an unnatural quiet, as if the entire environment held its breath. Birds vanished from the soundscape, wind froze in the branches, and even footsteps seemed muffled. It was as if the forest created a vacuum around the very moments people disappeared. The second pattern was the clean break of all physical traces. Tracks that should have stretched for miles simply ended, abruptly, cleanly, with no transitional erosion, no evidence of backtracking, sliding, falling, or being carried away. Mysterious endings marked the snow, mud, and forest floor. Experienced trackers described the phenomenon as impossible. An erasure so precise it suggested a vertical extraction rather than a horizontal departure. Another unusual detail pulled at the edges of every case. High visibility clothing that somehow didn't matter. A red coat bright enough to be seen from aircraft vanished into the trees as if color itself dissolved. Items of clothing that should have stood out were simply gone. As these patterns repeated, theories multiplied. None of them survived contact with the evidence. Some experts suggested environmental hazards, hidden sinkholes, abandoned mine shafts, collapsing forest pits. But these explanations required noise, debris, disturbed soil, remnants of fabric caught on roots, yet the Bennington disappearances left no such signatures. The landscape remained pristine, disturbingly untouched. Others pointed to the possibility of a human predator, but no consistent victim profile existed. Ages ranged from a young boy to a 74-year-old war veteran. Physical conditions varied widely, as did the circumstances of their last known steps. Motive, method, opportunity, all dissolved under scrutiny. The classical framework of crime could not stretch far enough to contain these events. And then there were the anomalies that investigators avoided putting into official reports. Locals spoke of moving fog banks that appeared without weather fronts, drifting against the wind or settling in circular formations. Some hikers described an overwhelming sense of dread in specific areas, as though the space pressed inward. Others mentioned low-frequency vibrations in the ground, subtle, pulsing waves that disoriented both humans and animals. These accounts were dismissed publicly, yet quietly noted in search logs. More ancient explanations resurfaced as the disappearances gained attention. Indigenous Abenaki legends described a place where the boundary between worlds thinned, a region marked by a stone that could consume those who touched it. Folklore rarely aligned so precisely with real events. But the parallels were hard to ignore. The idea sounded mythological, yet disturbing patterns made the impossible seem slightly more plausible. By the late 20th century, researchers began examining the region through the lens of geomagnetic anomalies. Instruments recorded irregular magnetic surges, compass deviations, and unexplained electromagnetic interference. Animals reacted violently or froze in place. Technology malfunctioned. Some theorized that disorientation, hallucination, or panic could follow exposure to such thresholds, but none of that explained a man vanishing from a moving bus without anyone noticing. It did not explain why dogs refused to track the scent of Paula Welden, stopping abruptly and cowering as if pushing past an invisible border. Nor did it explain how multiple individuals disappeared across different years under different circumstances. Yet, within the same 12-mile radius, search teams spent thousands of hours sweeping the forest. Helicopters mapped the canopy, volunteers combed ravines, waterways were checked and rechecked. The same conclusion echoed across every report. The forest was too quiet, too undisturbed, too complete. Nothing was found. Not scraps of clothing, not skeletal remains, not even a button. As public interest grew, the region transformed into a magnet for investigators, journalists, and thrill seekers. They walked the trails, documented electromagnetic readings, interviewed descendants of witnesses. Some left with nothing but frustration. Others returned with their own unsettling stories of lost time, compass failures, and sudden disorientation. The Bennington Triangle resisted them all. Even today, the land carries a heaviness. GPS signals flicker and die in pockets, compasses spin briefly before stabilizing. Travelers report moments of inexplicable panic, as if the forest remembers and imitates its own history. Some who venture too deep describe a transition, as though the ground beneath them subtly changes texture, or the air becomes thick, charged, unfamiliar. And sometimes, hikers vanish briefly, returning hours later with fragmented memories and no sense of time. These modern incidents rarely make the news, but locals know the pattern well. They speak quietly of places where the forest seems misaligned, where distances stretch unnaturally, where people report walking in circles without realizing it. The most disturbing question remains the simplest. Where did they all go? Because in this quiet corner of Vermont, nestled between ridgelines and forgotten trails, lies a region that behaves like an unfinished sentence. A place that suggests a conclusion, but never provides one. The forest feels as though it waits, absorbs, erases. And the people who vanished between 1945 and 1950 did not simply get lost. They stepped into something that did not want them back.